Okay, let's start. Let's have our discussion about the introduction of a thesis. So this is the third stage, class, after the selection of the problem and formulating the research title, wherein hindi pa talaga natin na-accomplish, but hopefully this week ma-accomplish na natin yan. The next stage is you will be starting to write the introduction mismo of your research paper. So this morning, I'll be discussing first the introduction mismo, and then the statement of the problem, and also the hypothesis. And if I still have time, I might discuss also the significance of the study. Okay, you can submit your concept paper. So the latest submission will be considered the final one, ha? Okay? Sige. So take note of the following. Ito din yung pagkakasunod-sunod natin, ha? Arrangement of the subsections of your research paper. Okay? So components of the first section, the introduction. We will start with the introduction itself. And then we have the statement of the problem. We have hypothesis and or assumption, significance of the study, and we have theoretical, and take note, and or ito kasi there are research na only has conceptual framework pero walang theoretical framework and vice versa. But most of the time, dalawa talaga, theoretical and conceptual framework. And then we have scope and delimitation of the study. And last but not the least, we have the review of related literatures and studies. Take note, we are using the IMRAD format. Therefore, we will not be using yung nakasanayan yun na format na may chapter, like chapter 1, background and its setting. Chapter 2, review of related literature. This time, the RRL is already included in the first section, in the introduction section of your paper. So please take note of that. So you will be doing this syempre by group, and it's up to you on how are you going to divide these subsections for the introduction. Okay, now let's start with the introduction itself. Syempre, when you say introduction, this is where we introduce your research problem, your topic at hand, okay, or the general subject area of your research. Okay, so you will be presenting what the readers need to know and what is known about your topic, or what are the things that are still unknown about your topic. So therefore, the introduction is a product of desk research. Meaning, magre-research kayo about your topic, you do background analysis of the references that are available and are relevant to your topic at hand. And you are going to explain and summarize these things in the introduction. And everything in the introduction should be related to your research question. Now, how are we going to begin with our introduction? You may either use one of the following ways of beginning the presentation of the problem. Most of our researches in school starts with assertion beginning, wherein you as a researcher will assert something about your topic. You will give your assertion doon sa topic ninyo. Example, your research is about diabetes. Anong example ng assertion? You will begin with, diabetes is one of the most common disease affecting the people worldwide. That's an assertion. That's your like perception as a researcher. Okay? Yan yung tinatawag na assertion beginning. And then we can also do quotation beginning, wherein we get the idea of another person and use it as our beginning. Okay? place it inside a quotation mark, and please do citations. Or you can actually start with a question beginning. You may start with a question. And then after that, after either the assertion, the quotation, or the question, that's the time you expound your topic. Okay, you explain your topic. Now, please avoid a dictionary introduction kasi that's the problem most of the students. They start always with a dictionary introduction. Example, their topic is about COVID-19. They will really start with COVID-19 is a disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. That's a dictionary introduction. Do not do that for the introduction of research. We always start, dito sa school, we always start with an assertion beginning. Let me give you an example. Oh, wait lang. We have it here. Okay. One is study, previous pa talaga na study, medical fake news and fear-mongering during COVID-19, the impact on the vaccine confidence among the millennials. Okay, later ko na yan i-answer. Sige. Let's not discuss first about the preliminaries kasi wala din kayong maisusulat dyan, like the acknowledgement, the abstract, the table of contents, kasi nga wala pa tayong papel. So, though sila ang tinatawag na preliminaries, pero last natin ito gagawin. Let's start with the introduction. This is the format of the introduction class. On top, you will have the running head. The running head is a summary of your title. And then actually, hindi ito na-edit. Supposedly, there is no page number here. But this is automatically 1. And again, wala na tayong chapter ha. Diretso tayo. Introduction. And this is how you write it. Only the I is capitalized. And take note of the first sentence of the introduction for this study. The increased rampancy of fake news, hearsays, fallacies, and unproven pieces of information during the COVID-19 pandemic is one of the growing public health concerns worldwide. This is, class, an example of an assertion beginning. This is the assertion of the researcher. So definitely, they get away from the dictionary definition. Kasi kung dictionary definition, ito talagang i-define ninyo yung fake news, or yung COVID-19 itself. Okay? So do not do that when starting a research. Start with an assumption beginning. That's the mostly used beginning of an introduction. And then after that, after the assertion, that is where you expound your topic. Okay? So yung assertion beginning is just the first sentence of the introduction. So as you can see, the rest of the parts here will be is discussing about the topic itself, the vaccine confidence, the relationship of this fake news to the vaccine confidence. So i-establish nila kung ano ba talaga yung problema. May problema ba talaga? How do you know that it is a problem? Siyempre, the effect of that in the community. And number 2, you can present statistical data to really establish na merong problema. Example, meron na talagang namatay nito. Pag sinabi mong merong namatay, you really have to be specific. Ilan ang namatay? Example sa problem na yan. Okay? So that is why if you are going to read introductions class, you will really see a lot of statistical data. Kasi that's how you establish that there is really a problem. Kasi you have an assertion that it is really a problem. And then afterwards, you present the problem. And then after that, you establish that it is really a problem. Okay? So yan yung introduction natin. But you have the choice whether to start with a quotation or a question. It's just that I cannot give you an example of a quotation and question beginning kasi it's not really that much used in the school. Okay? So, murag mga 99% of our studies available in the school, especially the present studies are all assertion beginnings. Okay? So what are again the 4 ideas to be discussed in the introduction? Syempre your topic, your subject matter, or your problem at hand. Okay? You have to clearly explain and elaborate your problem. Okay? And then the importance of the topic. So you also have to cite the role of your topic in the community or in the society and what benefit can we get from that. And ito yung sinasabi kong you have to establish that it is really a problem. So definitely, you have to state also in the introduction your reason why you are choosing that topic. What motivated you to conduct this study? Example, your study is about blood glucose lowering of a certain plant, blood glucose lowering activity. So the reasons why you're conducting that, maybe because we have a lot of diabetic patients worldwide. Ganito na sila karami, so you may present statistical data of that. And at the same time, though we have available agents in the market, ano ang problema sa kanila? Bakit tayo maghahanap ng bagong agent? Okay? Or if your study is about a staining reagent, okay? So, ano ba yung problema? Bakit kailangan tayong maghanap ng bagong staining method or staining substance? Okay? So, you really have to establish that in your introduction. Now, take note that the very last paragraph of the introduction should state the purpose of your study, meaning that is the objective or the aim of your research. Okay, if you're going to read, let's go back to our example. Okay, if you're going to read this one, syempre this is the last paragraph, but let me just highlight this one. This is their objective. So ito yung nasa last part talaga ng introduction. The objective. Okay? So like this, to deal with the threat of vaccine hesitancy, the researchers need to know if fake news and fear-mongering affect the vaccine confidence of the millennials in General Santos City. That's how you close your introduction. You start with an assumption, and on the body of the introduction, you will have the presentation, explanation, and elaboration of your problem, and establishment of the urgency to conduct this study. So why are you conducting it? And then you will end with the objective of the study. So as you can see, hindi ito pahabaan ng introduction. What is the ideal length of the introduction? 1.5 pages. Okay? So walang sosobra class. Unless na lang kung very broad ang topic nyo, pinakamahaba na yung 2 pages. Okay? Pero 1.5 lang din na siya. So as you can see also, hindi nga umabot ng half itong sa kanila. This is the ideal introduction. Kasi you are just introducing your problem and you are just establishing why you need to conduct this study. That's the purpose of the introduction. Okay? Do you have questions? Let me check the time kasi mga malampas ko sa time. Actually, dugay po kagay na kasi I am clarifying. Supposedly, meron kaming meeting with the dean ngayon. So, naka-ready na sana yung activity ko and then na-move yung meeting. So, kaya nag-shift tayo after the quiz. Let's have the discussion na lang. Okay, pero if the meeting starts, maybe I may not be able to finish everything about the introduction. Let's have that next meeting. Walang question about the introduction. Dili pa ninyo ma-picture out kaya wala may topic. That's our problem. Okay, so ano na lang ito, paunang discussion, and during the time na may topic na kayo and you start writing the introduction, I'll be catering concerns and questions about that if nahirapan kayong mag-start with your introduction. Kasi I understand, nag-loading patanan karon, wala man pud may isulat. Diba? Kaya wala man mo kabalo sa inyong research topic. Okay, so the second subsection of the introduction is the so-called statement of the problem. This is where we place the research questions, okay? But all the statements of the problem should start with a general statement of the whole problem. It's most likely restating the objective of your study. That's the first part of the statement of the problem. Restate the objectives of your study. Ano ba talaga ang aim mo? Anong gusto mong makuha? If you are going to do this research, at the end of this research, ano yung pinakamakukuha mo? That's the general statement of the problem. Or that's the objective of your study. But after that class, you will be dividing the objectives of your study into specific questions or sub-questions. All of these questions that you're going to include in the statement of the problem should be answered in your thesis, or it should be answered in the results. Hindi ka pwedeng maglagay dyan ng question na hindi mo masasagot sa research mo. Okay? Na hindi mo kayang i-measure sa research mo. Okay? So these specific questions should help you achieve your objective. Okay? Dinivide mo lang siya. Naging specific lang kasi siya. But again, all of these questions should help you achieve your objective of the study. So, what are the examples of these research questions? Actually, the research questions are dependent on the research design. Okay? So, depending again siya sa research design. Now, most of the quantitative descriptive, if meron kayo dyang pinopropose na quantitative descriptive na study, most of these studies start with a question about the demographic profile of the respondents. So if you have observed, if nakabasa kayo ng maraming quantitative descriptive na study, palaging number one question, what is the demographic profile of the respondents? You really need to establish the characteristic of the population. Okay? So that will be in terms of examples: age, gender or sex, civil status, income, educational attainment, or religion. But I'm not saying that you have to include everything. You just have to select what are the profiles that are relevant in your research. Okay? And then that will be followed by questions that will establish also the problems encountered by your respondents, either physically, mentally, psychologically, or professionally, depending on your study. So, depende talaga kasi ito sa mga topic ninyo. And other questions that may have close bearing with the study on hand. And for most of the quantitative research studies, syempre, everything ends with a question asking about the significant difference, or if it is not about the significant difference, then it is about the significant relationship between variables. This will be the last question. Okay, so let's go back to my example. After their introduction, they have, anyari dito. Wait. Okay, after the introduction, they have the statement of the problem. Now, since this is a quantitative, descriptive, correlational research design, ganito yung naging statement of the problem nila. So, syempre, everything starts with the general statement. Yung objective ng study mo, i-restate mo. And then, specifically, ito yung mga questions na kailangan nilang sagutin sa research nila. Now, again, since this is quantitative descriptive, this starts with the demographic profile. But as you can see, they only have 3 demographic profile. Ito lang yung mga profile na kailangan nila i-establish sa research nila. They don't need to establish the age, the sex, or the gender. They don't need other things. They just need the educational attainment, the occupation, and the family monthly income. So it's actually the researcher that determines this, ha. It's up to you kung ano sa tingin ninyo ang kailangan yung i-establish sa inyong research. If it is class A survey research, ha, kung magsa-survey kayo, descriptive research. Ilang questions yung ideal? Actually, wala naman tayong specific number of questions. It's up to the research actually. The scope and the limitations of your research. For most of the time, 3 questions are enough. Merong mga research actually na ano lang siya, yung hindi mahaba yung research. So may mga research tayo sa school na 2 lang yung statement of the problem kasi yun lang talaga yung gusto nilang sagutin in their study. Meron din tayong mahahabang research sa school class. Minsan umaabot ng 9 questions. And these 9 questions should really be answered in the results. So medyo makapal talaga ang paper nila nun. Kasi imagine, you have to answer 9 questions. Ito, mahaba na ito. When you're asking about the demographic profile, you have 1 table for the educational attainment, you have 1 table for the occupation, and you have another table for the monthly income. So question number 1 pa lang, 3 tables na yun na you need to explain and discuss also. Okay? And then question number 2 nila, what is the level of influence of medical fake news and fear-mongering during the COVID-19 pandemic on vaccine confidence among the millennials? Okay? Kasi ano ito, di ba? Yung impact ng fear-mongering and fake news. So yun yung gusto nilang sagutin. In their questionnaire actually, they have identified series of like medical fake news circulating in the social media. They really get it from the social media and then they have it validated kung tama ba na fake news talaga yun. Tapos pinasagutan nila ito sa mga respondents nila. Pina-check nila kung naniniwala ba sila sa fake news na mga ito. And then after that, chinek din nila yung vaccine confidence ng mga respondents nila. Kaya ito yung tanong, ano yung level of influence? And then afterwards, syempre, since this is a quantitative research, hindi difference yung hinahanap nila. Relationship. May relationship ba yung fake news and yung vaccine confidence? They are actually establishing whether kung tumaas ba yung paniniwala ng respondents sa mga fake news na ito, tataas ba or bababa yung kanilang vaccine confidence. Kasi nga relationship. So they are establishing whether there is a direct, the relationship is directly proportional or inversely proportional. So yun yung sinasagot pag ang question ay about relationship. Siyempre kung difference, it's the difference between 2 variables. So you can check on this when you're going to make your own paper na. Let's try to have other studies. I have a copy. Nasa email kasi talaga lahat ito. Ito, this is another quantitative descriptive research. Itong sinabi ko sa inyo last time. It's CAP towards face mask disposal amidst COVID-19. Again, let's skip the preliminaries. For the introduction, this still uses an assertion beginning. As you can see, the corona disease 2019 outbreak has caused a worldwide health crisis that has altered people's perceptions of the world and their daily lives. That's the assertion of the researcher. It is not the word of any reference. It's your assertion as a researcher. And then the rest of the problems elaboration follows. And then just like with the other, itong haba lang itong introduction. Marami kasi silang diniscuss, pero this still ends with their objective. Okay? The study aims to assess the knowledge, etc. Okay? But then again, for the statement of the problem, you have to restate your objective. So it's the general statement of the problem. Now let's look at your statement of the problem. Unlike the other study, this one has more questions. Actually, they have 6. So sinagot nila ito lahat sa paper nila. And as you can see, this starts with the demographic profile pa rin. Pero marami silang kinonsider na demographic profile. Okay? And then inisa-isa nila kasi knowledge, attitude, and practices ito. So sabi ko, pag questions dito sa statement of the problem, talagang isa-isahin mo yun. Kaya meron silang question sa level of knowledge, level of attitude, practices ng mga residents ng doon sa research local nila towards face mask disposal. And then, again, if it is a quantitative research, everything ends with asking either about the relationship or the difference between these variables. So, ito, dalawang relationship ang kinuha nila. Relationship ng knowledge, attitude, and practices, and relationship ng demographic profile doon sa CAP. Kasi kung babae ba mas example kung sa sa sex, kung babae ba mas nagpa-practice ba ng proper disposal or yung lalaki yung mga nag-practice. Yun yung gusto nilang mahanap sa number 6. But this is for quantitative research. So baka meron sa inyo class gustong quali. Anong ginagawa natin sa quali? Why? Let's go back to... Hanapin ko muna yung quali ko dito. I think... Pakita dyan ako sulod sa akong email. This is not my own email. This is the email of the research office. But I am actually looking... Saan yung study ng... Kung ang title ng study niyo. Wait. Wait ha. Ayan. This one is an example of a qualitative research, but this is not actually done by the medtech students, but the psych. Journey of generation experience with LGBTQ children. So, nag-interview sila ng mga parents, selected parents sa Jensen na may mga anak na members of the LGBTQ community. And ayun, yung mga experiences ng parents ang sinulat nila dito. This is a qualitative phenomenological study. Hindi lang ito edited, kaya may mga format pa dito na hindi talaga na-edit. Pero this one, at the same thing, this still starts with an assumption beginning. Okay, before they discuss yung problem talaga, like problem encountered by the LGBTQ community, yung mga experiences nila na sinasuffer nila, not just in the outside world but also in their family, kasi yun naman talaga yung ng study nito, so within the family. That is why they interviewed the parents, but they ended also with their aim. Okay, but look at the statement of the problem. For qualitative research, we don't really have a lot of questions. We just want to answer this question: ano yung experience ng mga generation X patients living with their children na member of the LGBTQ community? So meron lang, for qualitative research, meron lang tayong grand tour question that we don't really need to divide specifically. Isa lang yung question na sasagutin for quality research. Ano ang experience ng participant doon sa specific situation na gusto mo i-discuss? Do you have questions or clarifications? Wala. Sige. So let's move on. We have the assumptions. Sa research, most of our research sa school, wala talagang assumptions na nilalagay. Kasi assumption is actually the belief of the researcher. And it's the belief of the researcher that need not to be tested. Take note, hindi tinetest. Kaya hindi natin masyadong nilalagay ito sa papel mismo. Pero in the case na papagawin kayo ng assumption, remember, assumption is your own belief as a researcher, but we don't need to test it. What is the example of an assumption? Ito, study ito about making a new system, automated system in the hospital and clinic. Okay, so the group is making that kind of system and they are proposing na gamitin siya sa mga clinic and hospital. So ano yung assumption nila? Na since ginawa nila ito, the doctors and the staff will use the proposed system. Yun yung paniniwala nila. Gagamitin talaga ng mga staffs and mga doctors sa hospital or sa clinic yung ginagawa nilang system. And paniniwala nila na the hospital or the clinic is doing things manually. That is why they need to create a new automated system. Then again, we don't test this. In research class, what we are testing is the hypothesis. And ito yung makikita ninyo sa papel ninyo. What do you mean by hypothesis? Hypothesis is an educated guess. Take note of the word educated. Hindi ka basta-bastang gumagawa ng hypothesis mo. Meaning, if it's educated, you have to have a background for this. Okay? So, aside from that, hypothesis is a tentative solution to your problem. Here, you are proposing a solution for this kind of problem. But it should be educated. Hindi ka pwedeng basta-basta na lang na magsabi na ito yung solusyon sa problem na yan. Kailangan may research work tayong gagawin. Bakit natin nasabi na solution siya? So example, if our problem is diabetes again, we are going to propose a new agent for lowering the blood sugar level. So your hypothesis will be this agent lowers blood sugar level. That's a hypothesis. Pero kailangan mo muna ng background. Bakit mo nasabi na yung agent na yan makakapagpababa ng blood sugar level? Okay? So hindi basta-basta, ma'am, gusto na ako i-check ang tawa-tawa, ma'am, kung para gid ba siya sa dengue. Hindi pwedeng ganon. Kailangan may background information ka. Bakit mo nasabi yung tawa-tawa para sa dengue? Okay? So again, that's a tentative solution. So that is tentative. Bakit? Kasi it needs to be tested. So kaya meron tayong tinatawag na hypothesis testing. Now in research, we have two types of hypothesis class, the null and the research or alternative hypothesis. Actually, it's just in the form of the statement. The null class is in the negative form. So like we are denying the existence of the relationship or the difference among the variables. Okay? So example, there is no significant difference between the efficiency of male and female rad tech in the hospital laboratories. This is a hypothesis, pero null, kasi in the negative form. So we are denying na merong difference yung efficiency sa pagtrabaho ng babae at mga lalaking radtech. O pwede nating palitan medtech. Pero kung alternative hypothesis kasi, it will be stated in the positive form. So the same ito ha, pero positive form. There is a significant difference between the efficiency of male and female radiologic technologists in the hospital laboratories. So what we're going to do is we're going to test that. If tama ba talagang may difference yung trabaho ng babae at ang lalaki. That's what we call hypothesis testing. Yan yung ginagawa natin, most especially for quantitative research. It's either we conduct experiment in the laboratory or we do survey for us to really test whether our hypothesis is correct or not. Okay, let us check again the hypothesis of the examples I presented to you a while ago. Yung qualitative research, by the way, don't have class hypothesis. Kasi yung qualitative research, diba, if it is a phenomenological research, we are just exploring the experiences. We are not testing something. We just want to know the experience of these people over a situation. So as you can see, if we look at their paper again, after the statement of the problem, diretso na sila. Diretso na sila sa significance of the study. walang hypothesis. Unlike if your study is quantitative, just like this paper, meron talagang hypothesis, class. And most of the time, the hypothesis will be the declarative statement of your last statement of the problem. Okay, just like this. Diba? The last statement of the problem is there a significant relationship between the variables? Ito yung gagawin mong hypothesis. Pero most of the time sa doctors, we are using the null hypothesis. So ito, gawin mo lang declarative na statement. There is no, sagutin mo siya. There is no significant relationship between the variables. Okay? I hope walang mako-confuse kung saan galing ang hypothesis. For quantitative research, it will be the declarative form of the last question, which is asking about significant relationship or significant difference. Okay? Questions? Or wala pa na-absorb ang tanan akong gipang-ingon dinhi? Wala pa na-absorb, okay lang? We'll have more of that when you start working with your paper. But if ever lang merong questions, you may always ask and send your questions sa chat box. And I will end here. Okay? I will end here in the significance of the study. After the SOP, we have to establish the benefits we can get from your research. So what shall you do with the significance of the study? The first thing is to identify the people, the person or the group of people or the organization that will get benefit from the findings of your study. After identifying them, you have to state specifically what benefit can they get from your research. So we have this example of the significance of the study. You have to restate the aim of your research and you have to identify again sino yung magbe-benefit. So just like this one. Ganito talaga ang format ha, naka-indent yung mga magbe-benefit sa study, naka-bold, followed by a period. And then after that, it will be followed by the explanation of the benefit they can get from your research. Okay? Naka-indent yan lahat. Now, baka magtanong kayo, ma'am, gaano karaming entities yung ilalagay namin in the significance of the study? At least 7. Kung kanina sa SOP, sabi ko wala tayong limit. This time, sa significance of this study, at least 7. And you have to arrange them according to the weight or the impact or the benefit they can get. Ang pinaka mag-benefit sa study niyo should come first here. Okay? And then pasunod na yan. You will also include the researcher. The researcher is referring to you as the researcher. Kasi syempre, while doing your experiment or you're doing your study, you will also get benefit from it. And then, hindi ko lang siya nasali sa screenshot. But, the last entity that will get benefit from your study is the future researchers. So, please do not forget that. Future researchers. What are the things that they can get from your study? You have to elaborate that also. But please, again, do not forget them. The future researchers. Okay? So again, puputulin ko yung aking discussion. Next meeting, we will have our quiz about chapter 2. This is chapter 3 ha. Yung chapter 2 yung mga different research designs. And then after the quiz, we will continue with our discussion about the remaining components of the introduction, the theoretical framework, conceptual framework. I will teach you how to make your own conceptual framework like this one. And what else? The scope and the limitation of the study. And that's it. I have a separate na PPT for the RRL.